Hi, everybody. Maria Papadakis and Gareth Wheeler here at BMO Training Grounds for Locker Cleanout Day. Now, we just finished our player press conferences and heard from a various group of guys. Now, obviously, the result is in the back of their minds, but they have a positive mindset going into next season. Gareth, what did you take from those player press conferences?
Absolutely. We're going to hear from Greg Vanney, Ollie Curtis, and Bill Manning in a few moments' time. But the overall sentiment was one of still disappointment at the result, losing 3-1 to Seattle over the course of the weekend. But I think that there was also a sense of accomplishment, understanding where this team is now from where it was 12 months ago, 9 months ago, 6 months ago, that they went on this run in the second half of the season. The team is really actually close to taking that next step and being a team that really year in, year out moving forward, you can deem as MLS Cup contender.
It was said that it was 3 seasons and one this year, so I think these guys need a well-needed rest going into next season. A lot of them spoke about what we might need going into the next season. You think we'll hear that coming from the coaches and president staff?
Absolutely. We had some questions answered here this morning. One, which is on the mind of all Toronto FC supporters, is what's going to happen with the captain, Michael Bradley, who is out of contract. He did confirm that Ollie Curtis and his agent have had discussions over the course of the season. They last spoke yesterday, and the expectations is that the discussions will continue in the coming days as well. Bradley addressed the media for the better part of 45 minutes. It didn't seem so much like a goodbye rather than a rallying cry, that he believes that his future still remains here in Toronto, that the contract is one thing, but really there's other things that motivate him, like personal and club achievement, what he can accomplish and what he has already accomplished here at the club, his family considerations as well. So there was no part of today that really felt like a goodbye from Michael Bradley. And other players stepped up and said that the team might need another player here or there, certainly another attacking player. Bill Manning's already addressed this. I'm sure he will again in a few moments' time, that another goal scorer, another attacking player that create would really help this team take the next level. But the sense, Maria, is that the core is here to stay, at least over the course of the short term. And if you can add some pieces on the periphery, we'll see what kind of impact players can come in. That certainly will be a storyline to monitor over the course of the next few weeks.
Going back to adding an attacking player, we've seen Alejandro Pozuelo play a various sorts of positions this year. So adding in that extra player, just like Josie said, he thinks that it would help all three of them if bringing one in, bring more attack, bring more goals into the field. So do you think having attacking player will allow for Alejandro Pozuelo to be set in one position more than a bunch?
I think that is the biggest question for Greg Vanney heading into next season, is what's the best way to use Alejandro Pozuelo? We saw him playing the false nine over the course of the playoff run and doing so with a level of success. I still think that Josie Altidore or another traditional number nine is best for this team. But Pozuelo said his best position and where he prefers to play is as a number 10. With this TFC team, he was pushed out wide. He played on the inside as well. What is the best way to get the most out of the player as well as fitting within the team structure? That's something that Vanney will most certainly be asked, and it's kind of the biggest question that kind of remains. He had a very successful first season here in Toronto FC, but how do you build that team around Pozuelo? We're going to find that out in the next couple weeks.
Well, coming up next, we're going to hear from head coach Greg Vanney, President Bill Manning, and General Manager Ali Curtis. But keep it locked in on TorontoFC.ca for all of your postseason coverage.
to start with me?
Greg, a couple days removed from the final, have your thoughts changed about how it played out at all?
Yeah, obviously, I think we're all disappointed. We were confident going into the final. I thought in many respects we played well and had, solid control of the game. Again, it was a little bit a question of turning some of our possession and ball movement into chances and real dangerous chances. And obviously, anytime in a final, I think the first goal is so important because it just changes the emotions of the game and we weren't, I think, through all some of the dominance that we were able to have early on, we weren't able to get that goal. It felt a little bit in some ways like New York City, and that we played well, but we didn't come away with the important goal. And New York City, we were able to overcome that because we obviously got that goal coming right out of halftime, and that kind of tilted the game a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I could always be critical about things. Every time we play a game, things we could have done a little differently, better, stuff like that. That's every soccer game, and there's always a pursuit of perfection that you're never going to attain. And but I thought our guys competed. We worked. I'm proud of the way we approached the game. We went there to win the game. We weren't there for anything other than that. And we played like that from the start, and that's how we approached the playoffs. Every time we went to a stadium and every game we played, I told them to be fearless, and we're going there to win this game. We weren't going to sit back and see how anything happened. We went there to attack it and be aggressive, and we did that in the final. And I thought it helped us to set the tone early on, and we just we didn't make enough of the plays. Second, I thought it was a physical game. And I think whenever the game is able to be physical, I think it always it tends to benefit the defending team. And because if you're in possession, it's very hard to be physical in possession. And then, also takes a touch between players. For me, gets fouled. That starts the transition and the counter that leads to the goal. So I think, again, I thought we met the competitive standards and the physical standards of the game. We just some of those physical plays may or not played a factor in the outcome, and that's life. That's something that we've got to learn from and deal with. But again, I was pleased with the effort. I was pleased with the performance, and we just needed to, I think, score the first goal, and we would have probably went on.
What's the conversation with Michael like at halftime when you learn that he's suffered an ankle injury?
Yes, was making sure he was okay. I could tell. Just by facial expressions and things like that, that something was a little amiss. When I first got together with the group, he wasn't in there, which is not normal. He's usually, in with the group and in the locker room. And I asked, and he was in the trainers area. So I knew something was up and bothering him. I didn't know the moment, though. I know he winced and he made a couple faces, but got on with it after the play with Torres. So I think at that point for me was just making sure that he was okay, that he felt like he could go. I just said, just tell me if I'm not going to take you off until you tell me you can't go, which is, it's going to have to be pretty serious. So that's it, and we went back out and we went after the second half. That was it.
Greg, you added some pieces as the year went on. What's on your wish list in this offseason to strengthen the team?
Well, I think we proved over the season, once we got settled, that we have some very good pieces. We grew a lot as a group. I think we need to continue just our work as individuals and as a team with this group of players to continue to develop our way of doing things and get better. I think we could obviously make a few changes to continue to improve. We could add a little more punch to our attack still, I think, even though I thought for a season where you lose two critical attackers, we still scored a lot of goals. I think by mid-season, our collective commitment to defend helped us to become a better team. But I think as a group, we need to pitch more shutouts than we did. It was always kind of that one goal that we gave up, and we've got to lock that down and be able to win games 1-0 a little bit more often. I think some of that is a little bit of a nature of we're an attacking team and we're going to come at you in an attacking way, and sometimes that leaves you a little bit vulnerable on the defensive side. But I would like for us to still be able to be that way and get more shutouts. And so that's a collective mindset. I don't necessarily think that is about us going out and getting a lot better or changing what we do defensively or who we have. And what I think is important that we don't go through an enormous transition, because I think when you go through a big transition, it takes time to bring everybody together and get yourself collectively on the same page and moving forward. So I think we have a great core group, and it's just going to be subtle changes. And like I said, I think we all would like to add a little bit of punch into our attack in front of the goal, and continue to add to some of the dynamic individual play on the wings, being able to beat people one-on-one, getting behind teams, things like that continue to open up spaces for players.
Do you have a sense, Robin left you mid-season, do you have a sense of what your assistant coaching staff is going to look like for next season? Or remain the same?
Well, I'm going to sit down with our group. I think we have an incredible staff. Jason Hernandez was the one we brought into the fold there when Robin left. I give Jason a lot of credit. He provided us something very different because he has such a fresh relationship with the players, because he just came off the field with those guys, and he was always a locker room leader. And then he came into the staff. He helped us and me, who I did a lot of managing in the locker room. He helped to take some of that on. It was natural for him because he, again, such relationships and quick. So it wasn't really Jason's ambition to be a coach. It was he stepped up in the moment to fill a role that we thought was important, and he did a great job. So I need to just sit down with Jason, see what his future sort of endeavors are, what he really wants to do. The rest of the guys will be back. I think we have a great staff. Dan was outstanding. I think even when Robin left, I thought Dan came and he provided a whole new level of support and feedback. When Robin left, I thought was fantastic for our group and for myself. Nick and JB are Jason Bent are guys who they carry a lot of work from my perspective and help out a lot of bit. So I don't it's a consideration if we continue to add to our group. First, I want to see where I need to talk with those guys. I haven't been able to get a haircut yet, so I haven't talked to those guys.
Greg, you talked about the defensive commitment
Yep.
to the team down the stretch. A lot of that was down to the shape, and Michael and also Mark, you would often talk about winning the midfield, winning the game. They played a big part in that. Alejandro Pozuelo was in here earlier saying that next season he'd like to play more of a number 10. How do you find the balance between winning the midfield and playing that in a 4-3-3 and still trying to fit the star DP, so to speak, into his favorite position?
Yeah, I think it comes down to collective work, and within the collective work, every individual has to do their piece. And so, for Ale, can continue to do what he does for us and commit to the team's work defensively. He's capable of doing that. I think after a little bit of rest and an off season and approaching a new season, I think he'll probably have legs that are, much different than he was after 60 games. When he joins us, I think he ended up with 70-something games total this season. That's a lot of games. And so I think that's part of it. I think just collectively, just a shared, combined commitment to the work defensively, from starting from the striker to the back four and everybody, and it can be done. That's a part of it. We can talk about restructuring. We could play two behind him and one in front of him. We can do a lot of different things. I think part of it for me is Paz is most effective when he can receive the ball facing forward, and it's finding ways to get him into spaces where he's facing forward. If he's coming back and receiving the ball facing our own goal, while he's crafty enough to spin and get facing forward, it takes time away from what I think is our strength, which is the speed at which the ball moves in our team. And so it's to find the balance within all of those things that I think can help him to be his best and get him in the right spots to make a difference, while still being a good defending team. I think all of those things are easy to fit together and to work towards. And once our group gets settled and all the pieces are in place and all that, and we hit a preseason, everybody's kind of rested, and we start to approach things that those things will fit together nicely.
Greg, what's your plan for Eriksson Gallardo next season? Could we see change?
Yeah, I was a little disappointed, not in Erickson, but for Erickson, and the reason being is I think he came in, and I saw a lot of dynamic potential in what he was bringing to us that could really help us. He's still a younger player, but more importantly, the challenge I think is he transitioned to a new culture, a new place, and it's not insignificant that he had a child during that process, which is massive. He became his first child, so he became a dad. He got he got an injury, and there was a time period where I felt like he came and he was really pushing and was doing, and we were getting him, and then to a period where between injury and life changes that he was starting to figure some things out, and then at the end of the season again, I started to see him coming back with this dynamic, powerful, fast. By that point, we hit the playoffs, and so and many of the games we weren't chasing games, and if we were against it and counterattacking, and I could really use sort of his breakout speed and some of the things, then he would have been an option. Instead, I went with Nick, who was in a lot of these games, they were really close or even, or we were ahead, and we were looking for just the experience and the grind, and what Nick gives us is different. And so the disappointment that I have for him is if we would have had a few more regular season games, I think as he came out of sort of this spiral not spiral, it's not the right word, but this whirlwind that he was in because of new child and all these things, that he would have had more chance in the regular season to really kind of cement his return, I think, back to normalcy, if you will. Unfortunately, we were in the playoffs, and that became just you're just choosing in the moment and what you think you're going to get from certain guys in a certain situation. I think he's going to be fantastic. I love what he brings to our team. I think one of the areas that we can get better is in transition, to be able to be faster in transition to attack teams. Some of that is having a little bit of pace and speed on the outsides of guys who can get behind, having targets for pause to be able to hit in depth and things like that. He's got a fight and a tenacity about him that I think is there. Again, I think it's something that kind of went subtle a little bit, went into rest a little bit when everything in his head he was trying to settle in. But he has a tenacity that's going to help this team. I think he's over the tail end of the season. He got a lot more confident in crossing. We were doing a lot of work with him on the crossing side of things in his final product, and I started to see real growth in that. I'm excited about him, and I think he's really going to provide us something interesting as we move forward.
Greg, you mentioned adding more punch to the attack. Gallardo can certainly be that. You also have a number of young players who are fighting for spots. Is there going to be room for some of these younger players to come through and make their way into the team next year?
I hope so. To me, I don't put timeline on young players. I don't care how old players are. I've had a discussion with 6 of them this morning. Like, the game has no age as far as I'm concerned. The question is, are they ready to meet the competitive challenges of the game and the league? And those are questions that we're trying to get each of them to answer and to understand. I want them to understand that when they play next to a player, that player also needs to see them as somebody that they can win this game with, and they have that kind of confidence and they have that kind of presence on the field. I believe our players are on the cusp of that and are starting to feel that. I think through portions of the season, I didn't see it from some of the guys, but I will tell you that the last 5 weeks maybe where the team was in playoff mode and we had some of the younger players in training, I saw some growth from those guys from the competitive side. And I think that also comes from the stability of the group, right? In the second half of the season, our team was more stable. There was clarity of roles in some ways. There was, it was stable for the younger players to really try to start to fit in and establish where they stand within the group. And so my hope is that and my challenge to them is as we go into next season is that they can continue to show those steps forward, that drive and that commitment. And I think I tried to phrase it in a very simple thing. We all want to be pros. The question is, do we need to be pros? And do we need to be successful? And I want to see that crossover from me saying, I want to be a pro and I want to play in the first team, to I need to, and I'm going to come with that kind of desire and passion and intensity to what I do. And I'm going to provide that to this team. And that's what they need to continue to show. And I think they're learning that and they're taking those steps. We have some talented kids that need to start to step forward and help out the group.
And on that note, could do you foresee a situation next season where Liam Fraser, who looked great in the appearances he did have, and Michael Bradley playing together in the same midfield?
Yeah, I can. I think that is, again, it depends on how we structure. If we structure with this of a lone defensive midfielder who's just kind of a single pivot, it's probably one or the other. If we can do some things that are side by side, have some dynamic wingers, have a guy like Pozuelo in front of them, I see where there's some possibilities for both of them. I think, again, as we continue forward, all of these are going to be questions we have to figure out. What I committed to and to Liam, and I haven't spoken to him yet, but I've spoken to him. We need to get him games now. He needs to have a full season. He needs to take another step forward because he has the tools. It's about honing those tools on a week in, week out basis in a real competitive environment, so that he can go through the challenges that each match presents to him and learn how to tactically run his position in addition to working with the players around him and putting them in the right places and things like that. So that's next step for Liam. But he made great strides this year. He helped us in some of those key moments, and it's now for another step for him.
Does he have to go elsewhere to get that?
Maybe not. We'll have to see how things shape up. It's a consideration, and it's something that we've talked about with him. I do think, and we've talked about it, if he's a kid and a young player that we want here, but the question is also about his path to becoming the best player he can be, and I think we have to respect both of those things, and we'll see what the offseason and what going into next season looks like, but I think our commitment has to be to try to also help provide him with what he needs to continue to take steps forward.
What are your thoughts on Michael Bradley coming back, and how much input will you have on, if any, on discussions between the club and his agent? And after all, you're the coach, and it's your team on the field.
Yeah, I hope we get it figured out. Obviously, Michael's played a huge role in helping us to push the culture forward, to get a winning culture here at the club. He plays a massive role in that. I think there's a lot of people around here who take notice of how he comes to work every day and the intensity that he brings, the work rate that he brings, the passion for everything that he does on the field, off the field, the attention to detail. There's a lot of guys who see that in that locker room and have, for me, become real pros as a product of watching and seeing how Michael works and getting up next to him and doing the work with him. And so I think that's pivotal. Obviously, we've had a lot of success over the last 5 years, and I think he's been here 6, but 5 between the two of us and the rest of us. So I think there's still success for us to have, and hopefully we can find the right solution and make him be back.
Coach, can you talk about the season in general, just the highs, lows, and
Sure.
Making it to the finals unconventionally and coming up short, and just all those experiences? How are you going to move that forward to next year to improve the team and just everything you've experienced?
Yeah, for me it was. I've said this before, and I'll reiterate a lot of what I said. It was a long season. The coaches and I sit back and we talk about preseason and some of the things that went on in preseason, and it almost seems like it was 2 years ago. And obviously, for myself and my perspective, seeing it from my perspective, coming in the postseason, off-season last year, which we didn't do so well, and we all felt like it was an anomaly, and a lot of it was due to just injuries and the challenges that we faced coming out of an incredible stretch of 2 finals, 2 MLS Cup finals, which means playing to the last day, then being in early and preparing for the CONCACAF tournament, and then getting to a final, and all of this kind of came to be the challenges of 2018 and where it went. And so we were really, for me, I go into an off season, I look at the pieces, and I start to decide what direction do we want to go, which is kind of your question, which direction do we want to go for 2019, which now the question is 2020. But coming into 2019, we had Sebastian, we had Josie, we had Victor, we had all of our pieces, and we were just trying to get healthy, get that group of players back onto the field together, shape them up in a way that we felt we wanted to evolve a little bit, the way we would go forward for 2019. And as would have it, things start to change, right? So in January, obviously Victor departs. Seba is quickly his situation turns into question marks, then turns into his departure. Then it puts you into now the end of really what is your off season, and then the beginning of your preseason, and now you're trying to put together a roster and a group, and you just lost, two pivotal players into the identity of what your team is going to be going into this new season. And so there was a lot of energy spent on how are we going to retool this team, what is the vision of the team looking forward, the identity, how are we going to replace these types of players. For some of it is how do we replace their numbers on the attacking side. For me, it's how do all the pieces fit together, and how does this team become a team, and what does the identity look like. So I thought we obviously sputtered and went out of Champions League quickly, which wasn't our goal, but for me, it wasn't super surprising given what we had kind of come across in the preseason. We weren't built to make a run in Champions League. That's reality. So I didn't think we would necessarily go down in the first round, but we weren't built to make a run after all the transition that had happened and all that. So we went out of that, which allowed us a little bit of time to focus on the regular season. And the good thing was we started off the regular season with a pretty strong start. Guys were healthy. If I'm not mistaken, 5 games we went unbeaten. Is that right? At the beginning of the year, we were able to accumulate some points. We had I think we had a pretty strong 11, but our depth was a lot of players who were still kind of getting their feet and settling into to being a part of the team and what their roles were going to be. And the challenge I knew that existed after those games is we were about to hit 5 games in 15 days, which really tests your depth in our league. That's a game every 3 days, including travel. That's going to be a challenging time period. And then from that, we were going to go directly into the Gold Cup, which now you lose, anywhere from 5, 6 of players that play huge roles in your team. So that stretch of games from May to June was always an asterisk in our schedule that was going to be a challenge for us. In addition, we lost 2 key players that were going to play through that, right? Or 3. And so our goal at that point was let's keep our head above water because we had a good start. We had acquired some points early. Let's keep our head above water. Let's stay right there at the playoff mark so that when we get everybody back, it was almost going to be like we have a new team in a way, and then we had to make a run in the second half of the season. In addition to that, you have the transfer windows. It closed in May. We had really added pause, but we didn't fill in some of the other places because some of the deals that Ali and we were all working on just didn't close as we'd hoped to fill the roster. And those deals got done and closed, and we knew those players were going to come in July and when the window reopened. And so by the time July came around, we were, I think, right there at the playoff mark. I was really pleased. I thought some of our young players grew through that time period that we had to. Jacob Schaffelberg came into the team and provided us with a spark. Subasa started to come around again, and he played a huge role down the stretch. Liam got games that helped show that his value for us. So I think a lot of players grew in that time period, but it wasn't the easiest time period for us in terms of points. And so so then as Gold Cup closes, the window opens. It was almost like we had a new team again, right? You had Josie, Michael, Omar, Nicolas Benazet, Erickson starts to come in. We get Oso back. We get a lot of other guys off the top of my head. I'm forgetting names, I know, but come back, and it's almost like a new team again. So Pozuelo, I think, settles in a little bit because he starts to see some of the reinforcements coming in, which allows him to just kind of settle in and not feel like he has to do too much to try to win games. And it just took us a few games. I thought it's how quickly we can reestablish our relationships on the field and find our vision for how we're going to be successful down the stretch. And the guys, to their credit, we had to battle through a couple games, but we started to find that identity, and then from identity became resiliency, and from that became results. And then we went into some really difficult places like New York, where we missed unfortunate to have a PK saved, which could have given us a win in New York. We went to LAFC, and we were a minute away or so from getting a win in LAFC. We played in some difficult places that I think really proved to our group that we could go anywhere and win games in this league, which was important as we obviously went into the playoffs because we weren't necessarily in a position to play a lot of home games. We were able to get the home game, which I think was great to give us some momentum in the playoffs. But then we were able to go on the road and win against some very good teams in some very difficult places. And that was all part of, I think, the resiliency that developed over the second half of the season and the identity and all that. And so, yeah, and then we go to the final. I think given the way we had gone 13 unbeaten going into the final with some of those results in really difficult places to play. And we had a lot of confidence that we could go there and win. And we approached the game in a way that we were going to stay true to who we are and what had got us there. And I thought, by and large, we had good control of the ball, and they didn't. I don't think they had great answers for us. We knew we were going to have to manage transitions if we had the ball, and that became what the game was about. And like I said earlier, in finals, the first goal is important because there's so much emotion that goes into the finals. And between us and Seattle now being the third one, the first game had no goals in it. The second one, the first goal didn't come until, I don't know, maybe close to almost the 70th minute, 65th minute. And then that ended up being the turn of that and the win. So the first goal was always going to play a huge role in this final, and it didn't come until relatively late. And I think it sort of shifted the emotion of the game. I think they were a team that was a little bit on the ropes that then had a lot of confidence coming out of just getting a goal. They felt like they were now in a position to get something where, to be honest with you, I think they were questioning that before. And now we became I think we felt a little bit of desperation and trying to get ourselves back into it. And we weren't able to. That's it. And so the disappointment in the end was there because we truly believed that we were good enough to go there and win that championship. And we, as a group, we had a lot of confidence, and I can't be more proud of how the guys responded to what had been a challenging time period. And one of the things that I kind of left out, I think it can't be underestimated the emotions that a lot of us and people carried from 2018 into the start of 2019. And because we were all disappointed and hurt by what we thought was a team in 2018 that was capable of also winning a championship if we could kind of stay out of our own way and get healthy and all those kinds of things. And we didn't. And the toughness of that, or the challenges of that year, I think carried into 2019 a little bit. And we needed to exercise those demons at some point in 2018 to be able to find our best selves. And we were able to, I think, mid-season. And that's where I think some of the resiliency and some of the quality really started to shine, and the group started to feel like they could achieve some great things together.
Greg, it's difficult to win on the road in playoff time. Will there be an increased or renewed emphasis on finishing higher in the regular season table? And on top of that question, how close do you believe this team is the way that you ended the season from being back on top in Major League Soccer?
Well, what I'd say is there's always an emphasis to try to finish as high as we can in the league. I think that it's, again, we were going through, I think, an unexpected, in some ways, transition. It was a matter of how quickly we could go through that transition and how fast we could get ourselves back into a position to accumulate points at the level you need to stay at the top of the league. So I think it's, especially in the new format, home games are critical. I mean, we were able to get through without the home games, but I think home games are critical in a one-off scenario. You want to be at home no matter what, if you can. So I think it reemphasizes that importance. What I think it reemphasizes is you want to be as stable as possible when you go into the season, because the points early in the season are just as important as the points at the end of the season. I think consistency is as important as anything. You don't want to have ups and downs through the course of the season. You want to try to be as consistent as possible. And if everybody has a setback, a lost game, but you never want to turn that into any kind of streak. You want to be consistent. But I think the key is that everybody feels like every point is important and that every play is important. And that was something that was special about 2017 that we were able to find that balance. And I don't think we're far off. I do think that there are very good teams in this league, and the teams continue to get better. I think teams get smarter about how they put their rosters together. I think tactically teams are getting smarter. So I think the challenges are continuing to rise in order to be on the top. But I think we showed at the end of the year that we're right there. And we'll have to go in this offseason like every team and find the ways to get better as a team without losing the continuity that we have as a group, and try to take that into the beginning of next season and try to acquire as many points consistently throughout the year as we can, not just wait till the end of the season to accumulate as many as possible. So, but I think that's important. And I think we've seen, and I think we always believe that home field is important in the playoffs, and it's never an intent to not, but I think we understand that in this day and age of the one game playoff series that you really want to be at home, and you really want to play the final at home too if you can. So.
Greg, Nicholas Benazet was on a loan. Did he do enough to impress you to ensure he'll be back next year?
I like Nicholas. I think he's an excellent soccer player. Again, I think all players that you pick up mid-season, they show you what they're capable of, but I think they always have more because they settle in, they learn the league. They'll go through the adaptation process like all good players do to figure out, okay, this league's a little more physical. This is what I need to do. Connecting with the principles of our team and the rest of the players around them. So I think he's a very good player. I think he provides us, with some quality on the wings that we've been looking for. Again, hopefully this is something that we can get figured out. With the CBA stuff going on as well, we're not really sure exactly yet what this league is going to look like. 4 months from now, there could be an evolution. There could be more money. There could be a different way that you have to address your budgets and things like that. I don't know enough about all of that. We'd like to keep this team together as much as possible, but continue to add pieces that we think are going to help take us to another level.
Take one more for Greg.
Greg, how do you think the club's
We can go two. What's that?
How do you think the club's footprint in the league has grown over the past 5 years since you guys have sort of been cultivating this group?
I think it's been a 180. I don't know if I think I would say 6-7 years ago. I think a lot of players within the league, they came to Toronto, and it was almost like a death sentence, and they were trying to figure out how as quickly as possible to get out of that. Only because I have friends who were in Toronto, and the second they came, they were trying to figure out what was their out. I think. Obviously, the club, because of results and clarity and direction and all that, was still trying to figure out the best way forward for it to be successful, which isn't always an easy task, right? And so, I don't know that there was a status for the club. I think it was kind of a club that a lot of people just didn't didn't know what to make of it, and didn't see a clear direction maybe, and so didn't want to be here. And so. That's mission number one. Whenever you come in, whether it was me or anyone else, is how do you change that image and that culture, and how does it become a destination that people want to be at, and a club that people want to be at? Because if you don't have continuity, you're never going to have success, and you can't have this evolving, revolving door of players or coaches or anything else. It's never going to be a formula to success. So, first of all, we had to try to change that image and make it a place where people wanted to be, and wanted to be for more than 1 year, or and part of that is creating an environment and a culture, and then you have to back that up with results. I think the club has done all the things from the ownership side to build a training facility like you're sitting at that make it a desirable place to be. This is one of the best, and was one of the standards of training facilities, of which a lot of other clubs come here and they see what we have, and then they go build what they have. Atlanta is one of those examples. And so I think a lot of the infrastructure was in place, but it was really a question of how do you put that product on the field and get the fan base behind it, because we have an incredible fan base, a knowledgeable fan base, and for me, a different fan base of any other fan base in the league in a positive way. that create a unique environment. And so you had to connect. For me, it was connecting all of those things that really made this a club of choice. And then when you can back that up with results and championships and trophies and other things, and you bring in big players like Sebastian and you get Josie and Michael and these guys getting results, all of a sudden you become a club where people don't necessarily want to be, to a club that everybody envies, and not just within our league, but I think was a standard setter outside of the league. In 2017, I do think we were a team that challenged and created a new standard within the league by which teams are now pushing against every single year. You had Atlanta and New York New York Red Bulls hitting new highs in terms of points over a season, and you have LAFC, and that's what it's all about, because it's going to push the league forward. Because now, we've got to try to come back next year, and how do we win the Supporter Shield, which is always going to be a goal for us. So how do we get better? And that's going to keep pushing the league forward. And I like to think that over this 5 years, we were a part of the group that helped to create a new standard and new expectations for everybody in the league. And now we've got to go try to do that again. And that's why I'm here. And that's what excites me about every new season and every opportunity is to try to go out and be the best and try to create a new standard for ourselves and to bring pride and joy to our fan base and to our ownership and to everything else. That's why I live here, basically, is I live here for those moments. So hopefully we can continue to do that. That's what our mission is.
Thanks, Coach.
That it? You good? You had one.
The roller coaster of the season, well documented. Was there a specific moment at which you said to yourself, this is a group that could do something special?
Yeah, I think we had some of the pieces early in the season. I think there was still a question of what pieces can we add to the group. That's going to, again, always try to push the level of the starters, which means that you also add depth, because sometimes starters become the former starters become depth and all that kind of stuff. I feel like we had the pieces. I think once those roster openings became names and those names had qualities, I personally started to believe we had real potential. As those names and qualities started to come into the roster, and you see what each of those personalities is going to bring to the group, as people and as warriors and as teammates and all that, then I was pretty sure we had something special. Then we needed to buy into that as a group and connect to our principles, because we had some new players we needed to get onto the same page, and then relationships on the field have to build, and then confidence has to build. And the confidence comes from results, and confidence comes from competing in difficult environments and coming away with wins. You can't underestimate how much, for example, going to LAFC and coming away from that feeling like you should have won that game, but getting a draw. I thought that day was a new standard for us, especially that first half. And we talked about that after the game. Like, this is a standard we need to live up to every single time we step on the field, because this game demanded everything of our resources: concentration, tenacity, intensity, speed at which the ball moved. It asked our players to be at that level, and we saw that we were capable of it. And that day, I felt like we could win a championship, and I think the group believed that as well at the end of that day. And then it was just about a commitment and doing it and executing, and we were close. But I hate saying we were close, because I've said that too many times. So we just need to get over that hurdle again. So, all right, thank you, everybody.
good conversations, positive conversations with his representation. I think the last time I spoke with his representation, which was Monday or Tuesday, and those have been really good. I'll probably talk to his agent again later on tonight. Confident that we can get something done. Michael's been a big part of this club for a long time, and he means a lot. He's our captain, and we'd like to bring him back. And so we're having those conversations. Hopefully, we'll be able to find a solution very quickly. We're confident of that, and just kind of working with him and his representation over the next couple days, and hopefully there'll be something soon.
Is he under consideration to be brought back as a DP, or are you looking at other options?
Again, I think everything is kind of on the table. We're trying to improve the team in all ways. In terms of the category of player, we try to kind of stay away from that. I think that, the terms that he would be brought in would likely either be a designated player or a TAM player. It, really kind of depends on, what the league designation is. Likely with, I don't want to in this conversation get into whether or not he's going to be a TAM player, whether or not he's going to be a designated player. We just want to have a good conversation with Michael in this moment and his representation, and try to get a deal done, and then we figure out kind of the designations after the fact.
But does a lot of it have to do with how much you get him for?
Yeah, a lot. It has to just deal with compensation. So in terms of what his player category is, so we have to manage that appropriately. I think it's early just to determine what that is. There's been a lot of conversation about, can it be a TAM player, and I think that in the universe before he came here, he was definitely going to be a designated player. I think now that there's a conversation where he would not be a designated player.
To what level does the CBA landscape affect what happens with his contract going forward potentially with this club?
Well, we have to move forward as if things are kind of status quo, or there's a level of uncertainty in terms of what 2020 will look like, but we need to prepare for next season, not just with Michael, but with other players as well, in terms of bringing them back or adding new players to the roster and those types of things. So, not so much concerned about what will happen with the collective bargaining agreement. We'll be told that, whether that's tomorrow or whether that's in a few months. We'll get clarity on that, but it's important that we move forward as an organization so that we can try to improve and get better, such that we can, as opposed to appearing in the final, that we can win a final.
Ali, Greg described January when you came on board to coming on board to a house on fire, given everything that was going on at the time. Can you give us a sense of just what it was like landing the deep end of that at that time, and also you must be looking forward to a somewhat more sedate off-season this time as you put your stamp on the club?
There were, the first time I sat here, the expectation was that there wasn't as many signings, there wasn't going to be as much transition, early on in January, and all that changed with the number of players having left the club, only a few weeks before the season. So that was challenging and difficult. The business of this game is tough. The game itself is challenging, but there's good people at this organization, and I'm proud to work with them. And, when we did go through a lot of different changes and things like that, I felt that we worked collaboratively together to reorganize and kind of plan how we were going to attack the months of February, March, April, May, and so on and so forth, such that we would have a chance to play for an MLS Cup trophy. And so I'm proud of the work that the organization did. I'm proud to be part of that work. It was difficult and time-consuming, and Lot of fatigue in there, but we have a good club, and there's very good people here, and I'm excited every day to work with them, to share ideas and things like that, and try to find solutions to different problems and situations, and that's what we did early on in the year. And it wasn't easy, because I do think that a lot of the issues that we were facing were very public in nature, but for the most part, I thought we did a really good job of trying to keep things in-house and working together as teammates. And so, when I look back and I think through those moments and that experience, it feels good. I thought we handled it well, and there's still a lot of work that we have ahead of us such that we can improve and get better for next year.
Ellie, Greg sort of just talked about how, by and large, you'd like this team to stay sort of intact, but how excited and what do you think you would want to do to add to this team to make it even better next year?
Yeah, I think that we all share a belief that there's a correlation between success and consistency. And so, to the extent we can maintain, a core going into next year, I think is important. It's not always easy with in this league, in that we have an expansion draft coming up. You've got reentry, you've got free agency. There's a couple different decisions with regard to options. Not a whole lot, but there's a few. And then there's also there's Michael's contract situation that we need to sort through that we're confident that we can. So we're going to do the best job we can to keep this team consistent going into next year. I do think that there's opportunities to improve the team as well, though. A lot of those opportunities will be probably going forward as opposed to defending the net. But we just started to have player meetings today. We'll have some on Thursday, and then we'll have the remaining on Friday. So we'll see how those meetings go. And we've had some communication with the league office in terms of what we're doing or what our plans are, and those types of things. So, yeah, we'd like to keep the team intact and have some consistency, but we also would like to maybe add one or two players, to the team. It's always good to bring in new life and new energy, new personalities to the training ground. I think that helps with the final product, in matches. So, we don't see those as challenges, but more or less those are opportunities.
Ali, you've worked at the league a long time. Do you see, as we go into the future, that there's going to be more of those artificial devices like TAM and GAM? For instance, do you see that there might be a designation that might offer an improved pay above TAM but below DP, or something like that come in? Or do you think as the future goes on, we'll see less of those?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I think that in one camp, I think you have probably some perspectives that are how can we add different mechanisms to manage spend, and then maybe there's another camp that says, hey, let's just keep it simple, right? I don't worry about it too much in that respect. I think that every league has different rules, especially within North America. I mean, I don't understand Major League Baseball's rules, and there's a lot of them. But I think the belief is how can we improve as a league, and how can we create rules that will help us improve on the field, off the field, in all ways. And so I don't worry about the specifics as long as we're playing by the same set of rules as every other club. I'm confident in my ability, and I'm confident in the people that I work with that we can figure out a way to win. And, one of the major goals of this club every year is to compete for a championship and to try to do that. And I don't really look at the rules as a hindrance, or and I can't I can't tell the future in terms of what they're going to look like. But it's important to be able to anticipate for sure, but then also be able to respond and react. And we'll probably have to do a little bit of that in January. And we'll see, hopefully there's an agreement that's reached between the players and between the league. And then we'll find a way to move on from them. But I generally I'm okay with rules. I'm okay with different guidelines. You just got to read them and figure out a ways to maximize your roster.
You've kind of touched on this, but given that so many of the contracts on this team were signed by Tim Bezbatchenko, do you look forward this offseason to kind of putting your own personal stamp on this team and the identity of this team?
Well, I think a lot of the contracts were under, this year since I got here. Of course, I inherited some contracts, but some are new. I think in all ways, every year you have to look at the contracts that are guaranteed, the contracts that are options, and maneuver, whether that's restructuring different contracts, whether there's a buyout there, and those are the challenges that every general manager has. That is what it is, and as you go to, if you're new to any organization, you have to look at what you have, look at what you can do, and then you go from there. And we're able to do that, I think, in a pretty decent way in January, in February and March, and we'll have to do that again. I think budget and roster compliance, as it's scheduled right now, I think is February 28th. Again, I don't want to be too premature because we need to have our meetings with players and things like that today, tomorrow, and the next day, and we have to see where things stand and get a sense as to where their heads are at. Do they want to return to Toronto? Is it time for a new opportunity or a new challenge? It's not one-sided. So, I'm proud of the work of the staff, myself included, in terms of what we're able to do. Managing the roster and the budget in an effective way. Proud of Greg and all the coaches in terms of the work that they did to get us where we needed to be. Felt they had the tools and felt we had a good roster. Proud of the new contracts that came in this year. And the contracts that I've inherited, I need to look at those with an analytical eye and try to find solutions if there needs to be a solution and go from there.
Ollie, obviously, by the nature of some of the deals that were done, some of them happened after the season began and in July as well. Is the expectation that you're going to have a consistent group that you want to go forward with come the start of next season?
Yeah, I mean, we did, we changed. There were some big pieces that we signed in the middle of the year. And I think that a lot of those guys played a real pivotal role into helping us play last Sunday in MLS Cup. Some guys we anticipate that they'll have even bigger roles next year, like Erickson Gallardo, who's a guy I think will settle in well with he and his family, and we think he'll be even a stronger and more impactful player next season, and we're excited for him to be part of that. So yeah, we believe that there needs to be consistency with the roster. I think that that's important. I think that that's an ingredient for success. But I also think that it's important that you add different players that can help give the training ground, give the locker room a different type of life, different personality. I think that's important as you go, year on year. One of the consistencies with this business and with the sport is change, and that'll happen. You don't want it to change too much. I always say sometimes, if you need to lose 50 pounds, it's not great to lose it all at once. It's good to lose it over time, so to speak, and that's healthy. And it's no different than a roster in terms of when you look at it and it needs to improve and you want to get stronger and those types of things. Sometimes the way to do that is there's a process for that, and it's over time. It's not always all at once. So we'll see how that goes in the coming weeks and months.
And are you happy with your coaching staff as well? Like, this was all new when you came in, just in terms of consistency there. Do you foresee many changes
I think Greg and his staff have been fantastic. You know, from my perspective, it's, you know, everybody within the club has experienced transition this year. It's not just, you know, Greg may have mentioned that, you know, I came into a burning house or whatever, but it's not just me. We're all in this together. We're all part of this club, and you know, making it to MLS Cup is not just because of the work of me or anyone else, but it's the work of the collective. And I'm very proud of the work that Greg and his staff have done this year. I was an admirer from afar when I wasn't at Toronto, just in terms of you know, the coaching staff here and their ability, their acumen, and their commitment to winning and being creative. And I think that I appreciate that. I hope the fans appreciate that this year, because like, you know, it hasn't been easy, but we found ways to improve and found ways to win. And, you know, we got ourselves in the most important game in this league. So very proud of the guys.
One more for Ollie.
Forgive the hypothetical nature, but
Yeah.
if Michael returns as a TAM player, and if the DP rules maintain the same in the next CBA, do you plan to sign a third DP?
Yes.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Neil, how you doing? Mike, just start?
Yeah.
All right. All right, first, thank you. Thank you for everyone for being here. You know, I got a really great compliment at MLS Cup about our coverage, and I think we have the best coverage in Major League Soccer, so thank you to everyone for that. I'll take any questions you have. Obviously, just quick statement, I thought the way we finished out this campaign was excellent. We had a really great run. The team came together. Greg did a fantastic job to find ways to win and to be a team that became really difficult to beat, and that kind of became a bit of a rallying cry for this group as they came together. And we won a trophy. We won the Eastern Conference Championship. You know, we're a team that competes for trophies. We fell short in MLS Cup, fell short in the Canadian Championship, but we did win the Eastern Conference Championship 3 out of 4 years. So overall, I think we can still get better, and I think we're going to have a much better head start with this group of players that we have than going into the 2019 season. So we'll take whatever questions you have. None? Gareth, you always have a question. Go ahead, Christian.
Ali just used the word confident in terms of returning with Michael, and Michael seemed very confident in use that word, but obviously there's a desire on both sides. How quickly do you think this thinking comes together and gets finished?
You know, I told Ali yesterday, he's been keeping me abreast, and I said, let's close it in the next week or so. You know, so I think we're in a good place. And certainly there's a desire on both sides, and we just, you know, we just have some small things that we're trying to work out, but I think we're in a good place.
Is it fair to say that when you try and put a value on Michael, that it's not just on the field?
You know, and especially down the stretch this year, I thought he was our most important player. He's a guy that every day, and you've seen him, you guys have covered our team, he brings it every day. He's the utmost professional, and I think what we've seen for him, especially now at this stage of his career, you know, when the biggest games are on the line, he shows up. And, you know, he's a guy that I hope can be here when he retires, because, you know, I don't think we've had a player in our history, and I think also after him, who's really spent that long. And, you know, certainly we have Justin Morrow, but these are guys that have become identifiable, and no one bigger than Michael in terms of identifying with TFC. So I do hope we can come to this. I think we're in a good place, but he's our engine. He's our engine.
Do you see him coming back as a designated player, or are there other mechanisms that you can use to keep him?
I don't know if I'm going to clarify that. I think we can work something out. That'll all kind of come out once we get things done.
You've talked in the past weeks that you think that the team needs another secondary scoring option. Is that top of the list?
Yeah, you know, I think especially, you know, without Josie, we were able to manufacture goals, but just to have another talent, an attacking talent, that can supplement Josie and Pozo, that's something that I think can make us even better. And, you know, it's just finding, you know, especially as we've learned, you know, going into the 2018 season, it's finding the right piece, you know. And, you know, I look at the acquisition of Omar Gonzalez this year was game-changing for us, because you look when he first joined us, that game at Montreal, we became a different team. And so who we do add, an attacking option, has got to, you know, someone who can put the ball in net, you know, every couple of games, and someone that we can rely on. It's going to be a strong addition. It's someone that, you know, we have a number of profiles that we're looking at, but the economics will play out over the course of the next few weeks on where we can go with the financials on that.
Bill, obviously for the last 12, 9, 6 months, the team has taken great strides to get back on top. Is it just a matter of bringing in that one more player, or are there other things that need to improve to get back on top of the divisions?
I think this is group now. We're now in the stage of fine tuning. You know, we last year when we lost Sebastian and Victor, you had some really big holes to fill. We're not at that stage right now. So I think we went through that mid-season, and as the season ended up, this group came together. I think we still will get another attacking option. You're going to have a great goalkeeper battle with Quentin and Alex. You have depth in the midfield. You have, Richie and Oro and Justin Morrow. You have center backs and Omar and Laurent and Chris. And so I feel we have a lot of depth. And so I just think, get off to much a stronger start in terms of the stability of the team going forward, and adding a piece like another attacker who can come out and score 10, 12, 15 goals. That's just going to make us a better team.
Bill, does getting Michael's deal sorted early kind of allow you to know what you're working with?
That's the first one. That's what I was alluding to with Neil is for me, he's the most important pressing matter. We've had some discussions over the course of the season, and then before the playoffs, we really ramped it up a bit, and I think we got to a good place, and it was like, let's just get through this game and then figure out where we're going to go. And so, like I told Ali, I'd like to see in the next 7-10 days we can wrap it up, and then that will dictate where we go going forward.
Have there been any talks about CONCACAF Champions League and in the future?
I wish we would have won in Seattle and would have had those discussions. I did not make any phone calls on that because I wanted to win the game first. We didn't qualify. That's the tough part. That's a competition that we very much want to get back in. That game against Independiente seems like it was forever ago. And that was really tough for us when we went down there and lost 4-0. Different team than we finished up the season. So that's something we're going to go back this year and try to win the Canadian Championship so we can get back in it.
Do you think it should be changed, though, that the MLS champion?
Yes. Well, the MLS champion does go unless it's Canadian and you don't win the Canadian Championship. So I do think, at some point, if us or Vancouver or Montreal don't win Canadian Championship and you win MLS Cup, that's something certainly we got to look at. Look, in fairness, I think it's something they would have looked at had it come together. But unfortunately, we didn't make that happen.
Obviously, you faced adversity and you kind of came through it on the good side. Did you learn all over again about some of the people that you've gone to battle with, whether it's your staff, your coaching staff, some of the core group?
I always say you learn way more about yourself and the people around you when things aren't going great. And, what we did is we challenged each other. And I made a comment to all of our staff. I think there was a period there in June and May that we were struggling, and we all had to do a better job, from myself down to the kitchen staff, like just everyone and everything that we were doing, and then obviously the players, right? And so we, and I compliment Greg. Greg had a vision of how he wanted to play, and we weren't getting results, and then he really went back to his basics of we have to become difficult to beat. And if we become difficult to beat, and defensively if we're sound, we're going to win games. We're not going to lose games, right? We're going to lose games and eventually going to win games. And I think he was able to bring the team together around that concept. And sometimes it wasn't always the prettiest soccer. We had some games on the road that we came away with at least a tie. I think that led to this resurgence of this team. I think, I counted over the last 23 games, we only lost 4 times, in all competitions. So I think he did a really good job of finding ways not to lose. And then towards the end of the year, that actually, those things turned into wins as this group came together.
It's a tough core group to get into. This is going to be a winning team. It's going to be a front runner in MLS. Does the club have to maybe be a little bit more creative in getting some young players ways to kind of grow and push their way into the team?
Yeah, it's a great question, Gareth. You look, we have Jacob Schaffelberg, Erickson Gallardo. We have some younger players you guys might not have even heard of, and Julian Dunn and Noble Okello and Io Akinola. It's important for us to make sure these guys get the adequate playing time and the opportunities with the first team. When you look at down this stretch, Marky Delgado's still a young guy, but he's a proven professional. Down this stretch, we went with guys who had been there, done it before, and these were the guys that helped us get to the championship game. With our younger players, we have to figure out how to get them in. And if it's not with the first team, with TFC2 or some loans abroad, it's something we're looking at. Because we do have a lot of talent coming up. But at the end of the day, we're not going to sacrifice winning games at the first team level to get players minutes. And at the end of the day, we're going to put out the best product we can to win games.
Bill, last year we sat here and you were telling us that the mission for this year was going to be to prove that Vanney was a blip. Do you think you achieved that, and sort of what's the next goal?
I would hope we achieved it. I think advancing to MLS Cup 3 of the last 4 years, 3 Eastern Conference championships. We've been to 4 Canadian championships in a row. We have a little saying that 2018 was a blip, and I think it was. I think we still have to go into 2020 and with our foot down and getting after it, because we hosted 1 home game this year, and it was tough. Winning in NYC and winning in Atlanta, and it proved too difficult to win in Seattle. I think we took the game to them as a veteran team that had been there, done that before. Our group was not intimidating playing in Seattle, but when they scored that goal, the momentum shifted, and that's that home field advantage. So I think we're going to approach next season, especially without CONCACAF Champions League, guns blazing. And hopefully we, if we can make an acquisition in this offseason that helps improve us, we can integrate that player into training camp and then really hit the ground running. We did not do this year when we went into CONCACAF. So hopefully, I think when you look back, I actually checked this yesterday. There's no team that's ever made MLS Cup 4 out of 5 years. You had a couple of teams do it 4 out of 6 years. And so it's something, I think, just an early goal for our group is, can you get to 5 MLS Cups 4 out of 5 years? And if you know anything about this team, sometimes when they set their mind to it, they can get there.
Can you tell us what the retention rate is of season ticket holders, and also the playoff run, even though a lot of it was away? Can you give us a sense of what that has done to the bottom line of this team this year?
Yeah, look, it's going to be very strong. In a normal TFC year, the renewal rates are generally in the low 80%. The year we won the Cup, it was 97%, and the year we lost, it was 92 or 91%. Right now, it's about 85%, and it's gone crazy the last month or so. And so I think it'll finish up in the low 90%, which is, again, how we build our base. We did lose some attendance after the 2018 season. No coincidence with the team, the way it went that season. But man, our fans came back in numbers and fanfare, and to see that kind of little corner of red in in Seattle was magical. And so I think we're going to have a strong a strong attendance season as we go into next year, and I think we're going to be stronger next year. I think what you saw from July on is going to be what you're going to see next season throughout this season.
And on that note, did you see the Forbes article last week with MLS team valuations?
Yeah.
Can you comment on that? Like, how accurate are those to your eyes? Because it has you operating at a pretty serious negative in terms of the operating income.
Yeah, I don't know how they get their numbers, and so I'm flattered that our value continues to grow, and I think it's maybe indicative of how others perceive how we run their business. I just don't know how they get their numbers.
MLSE's put in a lot of money into that stadium. Are there any more improvements or changes expected?
Yeah, for 2021 season, we're going to look to have our safe standing done in the south end zone. So that's something that we're excited about, and we have to kind of we have to shift around some of our season ticket holders in there that maybe don't want that, but it's something we're going to do for our supporters group. So that won't be next season. The season after, we're going to remove the temporary stands in the north end zone, and we're gonna kind of go back to, we started it a little bit this year with Budweiser. We're going to do a little bit harken back to the early days, the TFC, where they kind of had a gathering area. I forget what they called it back then, but it was pretty cool. And I remember coming in when I worked for Real Salt Lake. And so I've told my guys, let's go back to that and see if we can replicate that without those stands. We had brought those stands in actually for MLS Cup way back in the day, and they've just kind of stayed there. So we're going to create another little area there. So those are the two things we're looking at. Other than that, nothing substantial. The field was done. Obviously, that was the big one last year. I think the field passed with flying colors. It was, we are the only facility, only stadium in the world that has a full-time soccer team and a full-time football team on a grass field. 95% grass. And it was fantastic. So it was nice not to get yelled at by Sebastian or Michael about the field for once.
Is the gathering area in the north end, is that this season or is that 2021?
For this season, we're gonna do that.
So would that be would you sell tickets for that in there?
Yeah. Obviously, there's gonna
It
be
wouldn't be season
tickets.
It would just be solo tickets?
No, we're even looking at even season tickets. A price point in there that maybe is different than having a seat somewhere else in the building. So we're we started it to a point this year, but we'll continue with that next year.
So somewhat similar to what the Jays have with the WestJet?
A little bit, yeah. And they did that's really popular.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Bill.
That's okay, people are walking around.
Yeah.
Brown, Frank Russo, kit manager at TFC too, if you guys want. Mike, we got everyone else.
Well, that concludes the press conferences here. We heard from Greg Vanney, President Bill Manning, and General Manager Ali Curtis. Now, obviously, the big talk is Michael Bradley. But like President Bill Manning said, they want to sign him in the next 7 to 10 days, and that's their biggest urgency right now.
They're on this. Much more is being disclosed than what was initially believed. Even Michael played it down to a certain degree. He was optimistic that a deal can be done, but this is Bill Manning's top priority. Calls Michael Bradley the engine of the team, and who can argue about the general, the captain? He sets the tone, and it's of the utmost priority for this team to make sure they come to terms with Michael on a new contract, which will see him be here for the foreseeable future. And that's why Bradley, it seemed like more of a see you later rather than a goodbye or see you next season, I should say. And Ali Curtis didn't hesitate, Maria. He said, if we get Michael Bradley on a TAM contract, we will be signing another DP. Sounds like in the form of an attacking player. So plenty of excitement to think of what this team with the core coming back would look like with another top attacking player added to this group.
Now, just like you said, with adding another top attacking player, getting that and also having more shutouts this season was on the mind of Omar Gonzalez, Michael Bradley, and all the leading staff here. So do you think going into that with trying to get more shutouts as well, we'll see another defender coming in?
I don't think so, because a lot of the goals that were conceded over the stretch of the season, I know they only had one clean sheet in, I believe, the last 14 games, but a lot of them were just a cheap goal conceded here, a cheap goal conceded there. But overall, the goals against rate was phenomenal once Omar Gonzalez came into this team. In fact, the 3 goals they conceded in the MLS Cup final was the most they conceded since Houston Dynamo came into town, and that was obviously coming off the Gold Cup in a disappointing game. So the defensive performance performance, I think, was overall good. It's just cleaning up the little things in the team. So I think the priority will just be adding attacking players and trying to find that next level for this group this offseason. That has to be the priority.
Getting to the next level is obviously something some of the younger players on Toronto FC are looking towards. Now, they mentioned Liam Fraser possibly playing alongside Michael Bradley next season, but Greg Vanney stated that he needs more games. So do you possibly think alone maybe getting him out there, getting him more games and bringing him back in to play alongside Michael?
They're going to have to get creative because there's a lot of players. Fraser's not the only one. Schaffelberg's knocking on the door. Okello, these players need to play to get better. And Bill Manning said it. They're not going to sacrifice position in the table or points if it just means giving players games. So whether it be players going out on loans or finding other mechanisms to get players more involved and more playing time, I think that has to be a top priority for this group. They're a little bit of an older team. They're an experienced group. It's a tough 11 or even 18 to get into. So they're going to have to find ways to give these young players more games and find potential players to then take over roles in the upcoming seasons.
I think someone to look forward to in the upcoming season is Erickson
Yes.
Gallardo, and that's something that they all mentioned today as well, because obviously, like Greg mentioned, he had some altering things, had a baby, Brent coming here, new atmosphere. So do you think we'll see that energy come out again in the next season?
It has to be. I think he's one of a number of players that TFC supporters are intrigued about, but to hear the coaching staff and the management rave about the player, it shows you what kind of faith that they have in a young player that you brought in on a TAM contract. It's not a small expense. They went out of their way and earmarked this player as a player for not only the present, for the future. We were unable to see Erickson perform as probably he wanted to down the stretch as they went with more reliable, tried, tested, and true options, but he certainly seems right in the plans for 2020 and beyond.
Now, consistency is key heading into the next season. That's something they all mentioned as well. So do you think we'll possibly see many more signings or any of those key tweaks prior to preseason, so that way we don't have to deal with the rebuild on the fly again?
This is the main goal, Maria. After Michael Bradley, they need to have a consistent group entering the new season. Adding players during the year like last year, even Pozuelo, Gonzalez, Gallardo, Mullis, go down the list, Beneze, players coming in, jumping on a moving train. It was very difficult to assimilate, and it took time for this team to finish higher up in the table. And this is what it comes down to. They could have hosted playoff games, hosted more than just one, hosted an MLS Cup final if they were better out of the gate. So they need to get their business done early. They need to make sure that they tie down the targets that they want as soon as possible. We have an expansion draft coming up next week that TFC needs to earmark which players are going to keep, which players are going to make available. There's a re-entry draft. There's plenty of movement that will take place, so they need to get after it quickly. But the first domino to fall will be Michael Bradley and getting that contract done. Clearly, they hope it's a TAM contract, and you can expect a new DP here in Toronto, which would be obviously exciting and which would absolutely add to the quality of this team.
Well, that concludes the locker cleanout day here at BMO Training Grounds. Thank you to everyone who has stuck with us all season. It's been incredible.
Your locker? Do you have a locker to clear out?
It's basically just the desk out there. That's
It's
my
a nice
locker.
desk. It's a nice desk.
But thank you to everyone who kept it locked in on TorontoFC.ca all season. But for all your postseason coverage, keep it locked in on Insider with Gareth Wheeler. Rattler coming up, all for one, in the Come On You Reds podcast coming up this week as well. Thanks so much, guys.